Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of our autism awareness podcast called Spectrum Stories. I'm your host, and my name is Arv Sharma. I'm an autism advocate, and I'm the founder of Alliance2.ai, an AI-powered communication platform for families with special needs children. In our podcast, we invite change makers from the autism community who are making significant positive impacts through their work. Today, we have with us our special guest and a significant influencer, Mr. Mahesh Narayanan, blending entrepreneurial acumen with compassionate advocacy, navigating biotechnology and technology investment realms with a focus on addressing unmet neurological healthcare needs. With over 15 years in biotechnology and a decade founding successful life sciences and technology enterprises, he now leads as a managing partner at Innovation Ventures, driving transformative missions and propelling startups to neurotech and advanced engineering. Inspired by personal challenges in accessing autism health-related services within his family, Mr. Mahesh is dedicated to innovating solutions for neurological conditions. At Innovation Ventures, he guides strategic invention towards pioneering ventures such as Improve on Health and Tensor Health, revolutionizing medication management and rehabilitation. His vision centers on leveraging technology to bridge care gaps and expand innovation's impact, envisioning a future where advanced technologies offer autonomy and dignity to individuals and families affected by neurological conditions. So without any further delay, let's welcome in Mr. Mahesh. Hi, Mr. Mahesh. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us and considering my request today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Arv. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. So let's dive straight into your journey with some of my questions. Could you share a little bit more about your personal journey, especially with your niece, who I noticed was nonverbal, and what inspired you to focus on autism and neurological conditions within your investments and ventures?
Absolutely. So I started off in neuroscience. I started off in Boston University as an undergraduate with a focus on neuroscience. I also did my graduate studies at University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia, where I was focusing on neuroscience. So neurology and oncology were the two focuses that I had there. Eventually ended up going from Penn over to Big Pharma. So I worked at GSK for a couple of years, focusing again in neurology before leaving GSK to form my first company. And that's when I stepped away from neurology and started focusing more on oncology. So I spent about another decade in the oncology space and, with a focus on diagnostics, therapeutics, clinical trials, and really trying to push some innovative ideas in cell and gene therapies in the oncology space. And what really brought me back into the neuroscience and specifically the neurodevelopmental and neurodegenerative aspects is that, as you had mentioned earlier, I had a niece who was diagnosed in autism spectrum. She was very much nonverbal, very low IQ, very low motor skills. And this all happened in the middle of COVID. And as a family, we're struggling to try to find any type of solutions, therapeutics, occupational therapy, speech therapy, whatever it might be, to try to figure out, is there a way to try to help her through this journey? And unfortunately, one side of it, because it was COVID, but also the other side was that a lot of these technologies were just not in the market. They're just not that much available for most individuals, especially those diagnosed in the lower end of the spectrum. And it became a pretty large struggle for my family. And that's when I decided to get back into this space, see what else is out there that's not specifically something that we can just get off the shelf or go to a clinic, because it was COVID. A lot of the occupational therapy and speech therapy and all that, they had an 18 or 24-month wait because they weren't sure when they'll restart again. And none of the virtual settings, any of that was happening at that time. It just was not working. And so I reached out to my startup and research network and I said, hey, this is what I'm looking for. I'm trying to see if there are others who are working in this space, because what we have right now is not working for my family. What else are you working on, and what could potentially help her? And I had 7, 8 researchers reach out to me in different parts of the world, and we were trying to figure out which of these technologies worked, and eventually found a couple of technologies that were able to assist her. But these were all inside universities. While I'm happy to say that there's significant progress in when she was diagnosed to where she is now, well, almost 4 years later, most families wouldn't have access to a lot of these technologies because they are behind university doors. And the only reason I was able to get through is because I had my network there already, having been in the research space for so long. But most families don't have access to that. So it bothered me that a lot of these ideas are not accessible for most families and most children diagnosed in the autism spectrum, but really across the board. One of the common things I found was that I had researchers who were working on Parkinson's or Alzheimer's or ADHD, and it was the same story there. And so it brought to light that all of these neurotechnology ideas were available. They're being developed or have been worked on for years, but they haven't been commercialized yet. So there was no one pushing these ideas into the market. It was just there for research purposes only. And that limited who could access that technology. And that's really what motivated the idea behind moving more towards the VC space and investing in this space, because then I was able to understand that that's probably the easiest way to bring the technologies outside of universities, outside of 1 or 2 person teams, and really help them get to commercialization so that it's not just my niece or anyone that I know that's benefiting from this, but the entire community can benefit from it because I've seen how well these things work. It's just a matter of using it for the right people and then using it at the right time, right? And so that's really what we're focusing on with access is making sure these are for the right individuals and making sure it's available at the right time.
So could you elaborate on some of the specific technologies or innovations that were really beneficial for your niece or that you're most excited about in the field of neurotech and autism intervention?
Yeah, let me speak in general because I feel like every single person I've met in the spectrum is an individual, and each of them have their own challenges. Each of them have their own advantages, and so I don't want to pigeonhole it into just what worked for my niece. I really want to speak about all the different technologies that we are bringing out there because every single one is addressing it in a very different way. So we have 2 companies that you mentioned, Imperon Health, which is focused on medication management, and this is quite important because there are so many ABA clinics, there are so many geriatric clinics, there are so many people that are not being treated at home or having any type of therapies at home, and they have to go somewhere to actually get it. And the problem there has always been that the digital transformation hasn't yet taken place for whatever reason in this space, whether it's autism, whether it's Alzheimer's, and anything neurological. They were still using paper and pencil to track. They were still tracking pill dispensation using paper. And it made everything slower. It made everything harder. You needed a lot of people to do it. And Imperon is one of those companies that's focusing on in-clinic medication management. They're one of the first FDA-approved devices to be able to do that. And this makes it much easier for whether it's a patient, the caretaker, the individual, him or herself, to take care of themselves even at the clinic level, rather than having to have a nurse or a physician having to do a lot of that. Tensor is a fantastic company in that they're looking at rehabilitation. And as I mentioned, it's very common for those in the spectrum to have some type of muscular issue as well. They're not able to use their fingers correctly, or they're not able to use their hands correctly, their feet correctly. And so they have some type of neuromuscular degeneration, demaculation, whatever symptoms that kind of come out of a lot of these disorders. And the goal with Tensor is, can we make it easier? Can we make it better for these individuals so that even if it's a child that's in elementary school, let's help them pick up the pencil properly, right? So that they're not falling behind in school. Or if they're an individual that's a little older, they're going to college or going to someone like you that's looking forward to going to college, but they still aren't able to type properly. And so they're not able to use computers. And so that's holding them back. And that's going to hold them back not just in higher education, but it's also going to hold them back in getting an employment and actually sustaining themselves as individuals. So that's really where we're focusing on our technologies that are able to address any type of issues they might have immediately so that they can go on and live their life to the fullest. That's really what we want out of the technologies that we invest in. And that's also very much based around what we call deep tech, right? So things like artificial intelligence, which we were looking at even before it became a big deal. Now, looking at vision AI and voice AI, we have also looked at virtual reality and augmented reality. That's something that really helped my niece, and I know that's been working really well in different aspects of neurology. And then robotics, again, enhancing just from rehabilitation to actually getting the motor function working in the first place, and then really helping them rehabilitate or develop the motor functions from scratch. But that's a big place that we've looked at. Diagnostics, being able to identify these issues sooner, not necessarily say that they're going to be able to cure these diseases like Alzheimer's or things like that, but maybe if we identify it sooner, we might be able to intervene faster. And the same thing within the autism spectrum is that most of the issues are really symptoms, right? So if you identify them earlier, maybe we can prevent those symptoms from getting worse earlier so that we don't have to be able to treat them long term. We can pretty much just have individuals be individuals themselves and just go on and live their life to the fullest. So diagnostics is a big place that we focus on. And yeah, we're also looking at anything in the medical devices space. So making it easier to intervene directly within the brain or directly within the peripheral system. There's so many companies we are investing in this space, but as you see, the trend is all about deep sciences. So we like when the science gets a little complicated because given my scientific background, the ability to go into the FDA and get those approvals, trying to find the right path for them to get funding. That's really where we come in as early investors, provide that type of guidance for any type of founders that we work with, and making sure that these technologies, these ideas really get to the people that can use them as soon as possible.
Yeah, it's amazing to hear all the technology that you're involved with, and especially the unemployment aspect that really resonated with me because I heard there was this statistic that roughly 89% of autistic individuals are unemployed today. So definitely like sustaining this independence and creating this really life for themselves outside of the home would be really beneficial for themselves as well. So as the managing partner at Innovation Ventures, is there like a particular criteria that you focus on while investing on what startups to really fund, and particularly those focusing on autism and neurological conditions?
Our fund is a early stage fund. So what that means is that we invest in as early as ideas and go up to, from a funding round perspective, we call it the Series A. So the first institutional round investment that goes into a company. And there's a significant amount of companies that fail from that idea to execution, right? And that's really where we like to come in and guide them through the process, help them build their companies, get that idea to market, build it out the proper way, test it out the proper way, so that when they get to market, we know it's going to work and it's going to work really well and everyone's going to start using it. And that's what's going to be beneficial for everyone. And from the type of companies that we invest in, medical devices, diagnostics, deep tech, that's really the three focus areas. So the only things we don't look at are things like pure services. And let's say you're having an ABA clinic. We don't invest in a clinic, right? We invest in technologists inside a clinic, but we don't invest directly in clinics. And the other end of the spectrum are therapeutics, things that take the entire clinical lifespan in the FDA to actually get approved and get to market. That could take 20 years. And our fund is just too small to sustain that long of a clinical development. So we usually don't invest in those type of companies. But there are many investors that we work with that do invest in those companies. And so oftentimes we tell them, hey, if you're not a good fit, but here are 2 or 3 other funds that will look at it, please pitch to them and see if they would be interested in moving things forward. So from a criteria perspective, what we're looking for are technologies that aren't going to take too long to get to market. So we look at that, what we call near term and mid-term development. And so something that we can sell tomorrow. So the idea is there, it's an app or it's a service that people can pay for, a technology service that they can pay for to get there, or it's a device or a diagnostic that could take 5 years maybe to get to market. And we're looking at it from a short and mid-term perspective, but we do both what we call direct to consumer, so people can use it right away, or B2B, business to business. So a company is selling their product to a larger clinic or a larger hospital system, and they can use it and buy the product off of them as well. So those are the criteria or the type of companies we look at. And yeah, we really want to make sure that there's a good science behind it, a good scientific team behind the product. And in the beginning stages, that's really what we look for.
I'm really intrigued to learn about the virtual reality technology that you were mentioning beforehand. So can you discuss some of the role of technologies such as virtual reality and daily analytics and how you see themselves evolving in the future?
To be clear, I'm not an entrepreneur in the VR space. So I don't think I'm the right person to talk about how these technologies can evolve. what I can speak about is what excites me about the space and why I like to invest in the space and where that could take us, right? So I don't want to talk more from the technology side, but really the application side. So let's put it that way. And the VR AR space to me is fascinating because of technologies like Meta's Quest or Apple's Vision Pro. These are getting more mainstream. There was a long time where these things just did not work. The virtual reality aspect or the augmented reality aspect, we've been trying for a long time. The first idea being like Google Glass, right? That came out back in 2010, then just never took off. And then it's taken a long time for Meta Quest to get to where it needs to be now, where it could do so many things. And now we have almost a $4,000 device in Apple Pro that could do so much more with virtual reality. I just don't know if how do people can afford a technology that expensive, right? But there are different layers that are coming up, and that's what excites me because at each level, the type of therapeutic, a digital therapeutic, or a augmented technology, whether it be for learning games in the virtual space. And one of the examples I can tell you, again, I can't talk too much about it because there's some proprietary aspects to it that I can't go into too much detail about. They're still working on the patents, but it's able to look at how you're moving your muscles within the voice or your eyes, and then it can teach you how to do it correctly so that when you're pronouncing things, you're able to pronounce it correctly. And so it's able to teach you, how to say the words correctly. And so for those that might have speech impediments, again, a very common thing in neurological conditions, including many autistic individuals have speech impediments, it might help them come up with a way to train the brain so that different muscles are used, but the same sound is coming out, right? It's a lot of virtual reality and augmented reality is about neuroplasticity. What that means is that it's a way to mend your brain, and the brain's you know the most fascinating organ in the body, right? It just does so many different things. But what it's really good at, it's learning how to do certain things different ways. And so the way I speak might not be the same way you learn how to speak. It might not be the same way an individual that has had a stroke can learn how to speak. And the same way someone that might have, had a speech impediment from birth because of genetic defects can learn how to speak. And we've seen a lot of correlation between AR and VR playing a pretty nice role in neuroplasticity and teaching the brain in a virtual environment how to relearn certain things so that it can be done better than the way it learned the first time around. And so that's what excites me is the application of neuroplasticity. And so when it comes to speech, when it comes to motor skills, so learning how to use your fingers or your hands or your feet in certain ways, being able to virtually play a game. There are many individuals that have motor skill issues, but they want to play sports like basketball or tennis. So being able to do that in a virtual environment where, they might not be able to do it in reality, but they can enjoy the game and just motivate themselves in the virtual world, which is itself a fantastic way to, get people to use that neuroplasticity and learn it potentially in real life as well. And yeah, the applications there is what excites me.
So, could you share some success stories or milestones achieved by some of your companies in your portfolio, such as Improve on Health and Tenswell?
Yeah, absolutely. From a Improon, I think what's important is that they've been finally able to crack the industry for where they want to go. Initially, they were using this technology only within ID clinics. These are primarily looking at neurological conditions and then individuals that have intellectually disabled and disorder clinics, right? So that's where they were using this particular technology. Now they've expanded that to geriatric clinics. So those are not just younger children, but also older adults that might be dealing with issues like dementia, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, or even the next level would be those that are suffering from stroke and kind of rehabilitation clinic. That's one of the key things that they've been able to achieve is one, they were able to get this past the FDA. They've been able to develop a fantastic device, and now they're using it actively in different clinics and showing some amazing results with clinics using it, patients enjoying it, caretakers being happy about the way the technology works, right? And same with they have now also broken into various partnerships with very large rehabilitation clinics, and now it's not just individuals with intellectual disabilities or physical disabilities, but also those that might be suffering from some type of rehabilitation issues, whether they broke their hand and trying to find rehabilitation, or they had a stroke and they have to have rehabilitation. And so a lot of these, neurological conditions, these technologies pan across that entire gamut. And that's what excites me with a lot of the technologies is just because it works for one doesn't mean it stays there often. We can apply it to so many other neurological diseases and disorders. And we also have in another company in our portfolio called AI. This is a company that's able to connect families and caretakers to the right resources. And I spoke about this in the beginning, is we like technologies that can intervene or provide the resources at the right time, because both of them are valuable. And BME was leading the way for us and from that perspective. And then we also have a company called Endomedics. Now, Endomedics is a company that's very much in the medical devices side. It needs to go through the full FDA pathway for a medical device. But what excites me there is that they're focusing specifically on brain surgeries. And so for individuals, it's not just what we call traumatic brain injuries, but also for stroke patients or those that might have Parkinson's. They have so many different surgeries or reasons for surgeries that they have to do within the brain. And Endomedics has created what we call a hemostat. It stops the brain bleeds while the surgeries are happening. And they've been able to show that their technology is a better replacement for what we have right now because it's clear. So the surgeon can see where the brain is bleeding and actually be able to take care of it sooner. But it also stops that brain bleed faster than existing technologies. And there's less effect within the brain. So we have to worry about less overall complications that could happen due to a brain surgery. And so that's another company that we're excited about. But one component that we haven't really talked about that we do really focus on is also pain. Pain is a component that we often forget is very much, embedded into all aspects of neurology, right? Anytime you get hurt, there's a reason why it feels like something's hurting, right? Because the signal going to the brain and the brain is wanting the body to focus on that particular space. But there are issues of people not being able to understand their pain, right? So the pain is, the brain's not able to process the pain the right way. And so it comes off of as a different signal. Or the bigger problem that we have right now is we can't measure pain properly. So the same person, the same exact injury, one day could say, oh, my pain's only a 2, so I'm perfectly fine, just give me Tylenol. And the next day come back and say, it's a 10, I can't stand, please give me opioids, right? And this was a big issue for decades where it became addicting for people that have pain to take these opioids and can't wean them out. And so when they're still in pain and we can't give them opioids, they'll go to alternatives which are much worse. And so it's created a whole opioid epidemic, as we're calling it right now. And so we are focusing on companies that are able to find alternatives for pain that don't involve the opioid pathway and are able to address it from that perspective as well. So we're quite excited about what's to come in our portfolio. And there are a couple other technologies that unfortunately I can't disclose right now that I'm very excited about. But I think this decade really is the decade of the brain. And I think we're going to find some really cool technologies that in 5 to 10 years are going to be the standard and the gold standard for how we treat patients, how we take care of patients, and how we help caretakers, the families, the providers, whoever it might be, so that the best outcome is provided to any of these individuals.
On the flip side, what are some of the biggest challenges that you've encountered in investing in early stage companies focused on autism and neurotech?
So it's about the data, right? We just don't have enough data for a lot of these technologies. So when we come into early stage companies, many of them are pretty much coming up with the idea right now. And so they don't really have anything to show that it works, right? Or they don't have the right type of data. And now we have to figure out, is it going to be enough to get it to market? And so we know there's a large market, right? That no one questions whether it's autism or ADHD or stroke, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. These are all huge markets. Most of these have no drugs approved by the FDA. Most of them have no proper diagnoses. And that's always a big market that we just haven't been able to address. And historically, there have been a lot of failures, right? So it makes it very difficult for us to figure out what's going to work and what's not going to work, because so many things have failed that we thought we were going to work. And what's important for us is that we don't go to the same path that we've already done in the past. And that's one of the key things that we look for, is that there have been too many paths that are graveyards at this point, where so many companies have tried it and have just failed. And we've lost billions of dollars, over the years trying to move after this research. Understanding this market, we've done that, but understanding the technologies that will work in this market is what we have to really address. And the biggest problem with anything related to the brain is that, unlike most of the body, there aren't good or even existing biomarkers, right? So the brain doesn't express proteins like the rest of the body does. The brain doesn't give off signals the same way the rest of the body does. And so what that means is we can diagnose cancer much better now, because we've identified how to read biomarkers of cancer. What we've not yet done well is understand the biomarkers of the brain and really try to figure out what signals is the brain giving, whether it be signals using neurons, so neuronal signals, whether it be highlighting different inflammation areas within the brain, right? So that's what we need to really address. And that's a challenge that we're trying to come over, is how do we know that someone's having a problem? That's the diagnosis part. And then which paths have you already tried and have failed, and we don't want to do it again, right? So removing the paths that have already been paved, because those paths have led to dead ends. And so being able to create new paths and trying to find new ways to address the same problem, but not so new that the FDA won't approve it, right? It's a very, minute balance of, it's new enough that we want to try it, but not so new that we're going to be scared of using it. And so that's the dance that we have to play with the FDA, the clinical trials, and how we invest, because we don't want to invest in a company that can't get to the market because it's too complicated, right? That's also an issue. That's something that we always ask, is how viable is this to get to market?
So, what advice would you give to entrepreneurs and innovators looking to develop solutions for autism and neurological condition?
I think the biggest advice I can give is keep trying, right? We've tried a lot and we have failed a lot. And that's because I think we were exploring that same path over and over. I think there are more investors will bring more money into the space if we have more successes. And we can't have more successes if everyone just stops trying, right? Because we've already had too many failures, so we don't want to go after it. And we now understand the science a lot more than we did 20 years ago or 30 years ago. We might have to go back and see some of the science of it. Did we do correctly, or did we explore it the right way? So for me, it's keep trying. It's okay to fail. It's, that's part of entrepreneurship. That it is an experiment. We're all experimenting. And as most people who have gone through even high school science know, most experiments fail, and that is okay. That's why it's called an experiment. And what we as investors like are companies that fail fast. They fail fast and they fail cheaply. That's what's important. So when you are trying out these ideas, figure out, is it the easiest way for me to test this idea out? Is it the cheapest way for me to test this idea out? And then you find investors like me, and there are many others that are coming into the space, who will be willing to take that bet and say, hey, you know what? I think it's worth taking this bet. Am I going to write you $1 million check? Probably not. But you don't need that. That's failing expensively. What you need to do is see if you're able to fail quickly with a $50,000 check or a $100,000 check. A lot of these ideas also have non-dilutive funding. So it's very important to try to get as much of that. So government grants, foundational grants, family office grants. Go after money, not just coming from people like me that are VCs, because I'm going to take a part of your company. Go after money that from individuals who are also passionate about this. The way my business model works is not how most nonprofits and foundations work, right? So they don't need equity. They just want to make an impact. Go to them and say, hey, this is the idea I want to test out. Can you give me this small check now? Let me test it out and see if it works. If it doesn't work, no problem. If it works, then it can come to me and others and get some bigger checks and keep going. So it just find the right avenues, continue testing, and just making sure that if you're going to fail cheaply, fail fast, and get on to the next idea. Just keep trying other ways to get there, because we need more solutions. We need more ideas to be funded and get to the market, because we haven't tried enough and we aren't funding enough. And I'm happy to fund good ideas, even if it's just ideas. But I just need to know that it's different from what everyone else has done. That's what's important.
And finally, what are some of your goals and aspirations for innovation ventures in terms of supporting individuals on the spectrum and neurotechnology space?
Yeah. So look, our goal is if our companies, the companies that we back, can touch 1 million individuals in autism and 10 million people across the brain health space, that would be the best thing I could do, is knowing that companies that we backed are now helping individuals in the spectrum, their families, individuals that are suffering from strokes, concussions, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, because anyone in healthcare, we're all there to try to help people. That's why we like this space, right? Everything that we do is impactful because it's going to save someone's life or it's going to make someone's life better. And that's what we want. Now, how do we do it? Each of us are taking a different way to get there, right? For me is let me try to help as many of these companies as early as possible so that even if we invest in 40 companies and 30 of them fail, that's okay because now that's 10 new ideas that got to market and are helping people. And each of those 10 ideas could be helping 1 million people in 10 years, right? That's where we want to be. And so we're open to backing those type of ideas and getting that the communal effort and the communal effect of doing it. Because right now, there aren't great incentives to put these ideas out there. And so we are trying to create those incentives as VCs, as investors, to say, hey, there is a reason why this market exists. And unfortunately, money moves the world. And so if people don't think they can make money off of things, they don't want to do it. And so we are trying to find ways to say there's a lot more to this space than just let's make money. We can all make money in the long term, but if we can also help 10 million people live better lives across the world, that's the overall effect. We don't necessarily call ourselves an impact fund, but we very much are looking to make that impact as much as anyone else because that it's important that we try and important that we specialize and focus on something very specific that's going to help people rather than just make money.
Yeah, that's such a powerful message. And with that being said, that's all for today, folks. Mr. Mahesh, thank you so much for providing your valuable time today. And it was a great pleasure meeting you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Arav. And again, really enjoyed the conversation. Hope to continue having these more conversations. It's very important that we have these conversations, and especially with someone like you who's moving this idea forward and bringing some amazing people to speak about the space and getting more of this information out there for those who are not aware that these issues exist, right? And so bringing that awareness is as important. So and I applaud you for taking this effort and finding amazing people to speak with. And I'm glad to be part of a very small conversation of a much larger conversation we need to have. So applaud you and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. I truly appreciate it. And to our audience out there, thank you so much for tuning in today. We will return with another Changemaker soon. Until then, take care of yourself and remember, inclusion leads to innovation. Peace out.